Thanks for coming to this session. I'm Mark Northover and my colleague Nawal we're members of the Centre for Learning and Teaching at AUT, Auckland University of Technology. I seem to have picked up a cold yesterday, thank you Australia. But the drugs are kind of working, so if I don't make a lot of sense, blame the drugs. We started the idea of putting together this journey for grades integration really, I guess, a couple of years ago, and we've been on a bit of a journey since. But really for me, and this is where the kind of there and back again theme came from, I started AUT as part of the team to deploy and grow our Blackboard install at AUT 15 years ago, actually 16, end of 2003. And one of the first things I decided I needed to do as part of that implementation was to build an integration of grades between Blackboard and our student management system. Now, our student management system is called Arian, which is why this title is Blackboard Arian Integration. So Arian is a home-built system, and you can imagine the strife that brings with it. So 15 years ago, I thought, okay, this is something that we need to do. And so without wanting to dwell on it too much, I thought I do probably need at least to just go back a little bit over the false starts, the quicksand, the dead ends. And so we built this idea of the map of where we've been. And to start with the dead end island. So initially, I went to various people around the university and said, so how do I go about starting to get this grades integration happening? And they said, well, you know, to do that, you have to get the Arian team to build you an integration, and at the moment, they are completely screwed, basically, to use the vernacular, so don't even try, all right? So that was my first dead end, like, basically, just don't even try. They don't have the resources to do this. So I forgot about it, and then a few years later, there was another opportunity that seemed to appear, where the university started to think, okay, we need to get rid of this home-built student information system, and we need to evaluate and build and bring in another, widely used commercial product. And so there was a whole big, probably year-long evaluation done. Another system was selected. That system is quite commonly used in Australia. And so I thought, okay, this is when it's going to happen. Other institutions in Australia must have this integration happening, right? I won't actually say what it was because we didn't actually go ahead with it when the university found out what it was going to cost to implement a new student management system. So the best laid plans of, okay, this is going to happen now when we put in this new SIS, that all fell apart as well. So that was another dead end. So finally, probably about 12 years after I started doing this, so I think we now go to, so the idea of chucking all that away, thank you, Nawal, was it was kind of, so how do we make this happen as another dead end? Then we started, actually, I go back a year or two, I should give a shout out to Richard Stalls, who I think he was at Edith Cowan at the time. He's now working for Blackboard, isn't he, Alan, for the Ally system. And I went to a presentation that he did at a Blackboard Teaching and Learning conference, 5 years ago maybe, where he presented the grades integration that they had at Edith Cowan, which used a middleware, and I thought, that's exactly what we need, something to kind of match up the two systems and just transfer data. So we started a project with a technology member of the AUT team, and we got the Arian team involved, and we found out that Blackboard had developed a tool called Grades Journey, which had come out from, I think, the UK. And so we thought, okay, now we can start to make this happen. The problem was, Arian was such a closed box that there was no way that they would entertain the idea of a middleware and something that would actually transfer information between. So what the Grades Journey allowed us to do, in fact, was to use some of the functionality, which included downloading assessment structure from Arian and setting up columns in the Grade Centre. Has anybody in the room used Grades Journey? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So the idea that it would actually populate the assessment structure into Blackboard seemed like, okay, well, this is a way of of securing the assessment structure and the data sets. But as you will know if you tried to use that, and Shelley, I don't know how far you got, but there was only so far that that process could go, right? It would populate the grade centre with new columns. Now those new columns didn't necessarily match up with the actual assessment event that you had set up in Blackboard, such as the assignment submission or the quiz or whatever it was. And one of the biggest problems, of course, is that it could not create an event called a Turn-It-In assignment. And like it or not, the majority of our staff were not using Blackboard assignments, the inbuilt, basic assessment assignment tool, but they were using the Turn-It-In integration. And there was no way that the grades journey would create a Turn-It-In column. So we kind of got it working, but what it meant was that Shen and Lisa and Nawal would have to basically create a whole manual just about for every single course, right, on how they would then go about matching up or recreating new columns in the grade centre so that they could match with the columns that you were actually using, so that then that grades transfer could happen. Now we had a nightly feed and it actually did work. It worked fine, it worked like a treat, but it was never scalable. Right? We started out with, what did we do in 2017? We might have done, 20 or 30 courses using it, maybe. And every course had to basically have an instruction manual written on how to go about it. So, have we got the throwing, have I said everything on there, Nawal? Near enough. Sorry, I'm just kind of going without reading the script. So, we got to the point where we realised actually that all has to be thrown away as well. Because it works, but it was never going to scale. I mean, we're a 20,000 student university, 30,000 actual warm bodies, 2,500 course instances in a year. If that was the work we needed to do to support 20 or 30 courses, how are we going to support 2,000? It was never going to work. So we basically, we did keep allowing that system to be used by those same courses for the next year or so, but we decided that we had to take a completely different approach. And it was partly opportune that one member in our team left and the project was taken over by somebody else. 2 or 3 people from the Arian team left that I think had been a bit gatekeepy, and then we got together on a completely new project and started all over again. So, Nawal, do you want to take over from there and kind of explain where we're at?
And then V2, which is the new project, we presented this. The full integration with an interface, so it's no more overnight workflow. It extracts all information from Arian, all the columns, to Blackboard, and then it maps. That's the Arian columns extract from Arian, and it maps the Blackboard column from the grade center. The lecturers, the only thing they need to do following this user guide in one page, they select the column matching the column in Arian, and they save the mapping and copy across. 2-3 steps and all grades are in Arian. Definitely there is no solution that's perfect, but we tried our best to overcome the challenges, which were error messages. Some of the error messages were too technical for lecturers, so we had to translate them. Like the columns are different with different max mark, and we had grading schema. So the only grading schema is the map 1, which is out of 100. If you are grading out of 50 or grading, like using the 0 to 9 grading schema, that won't work. So we are applying it for grading schema map 1, which is out of 100. scale, different paper code. So if there is two different paper codes taking the same course, it won't work. So we have to get all streams with different paper code. Link structure. Because in Aryan, if you have different streams, which you can name it different sections in one course, the streams needs to be linked, and sometimes the admin don't link the structures or they don't link all the streams, so there is a mismatch or a gap there, and it gives an error. We did try to overcome the challenges, and then we did a survey, and we had few response, like the paper was around 80 papers. We applied it for 80 papers, and we had around 50 or response. I thought it was great. So the papers with 500 students, they no longer need to enter it manually. It's just, if they're grading online, all the grades will be transferred. And then much easier, they're entering grades one by one. We got also feedback, once I knew how it works, I really like it. So maybe they will say, oh, I need to make sure the grade center columns are correct. I need to make sure the max point is similar, matching between Aryan and Blackboard. So these bit tricks, we need to work with them. And after that was easy to go through. Overcoming the challenges will take us to the future steps, which will be clear messages, trying to improve day by day with the messages they receive. Each time there is a new message that we need to translate. Grading schema, we're trying to implement it for the 0 to 1 grading, so it will cover the health faculty. Also different paper codes. We have lots of engineering papers with computer science papers that merge, so different paper codes taking the same course. Competency-based evaluation, which is based on learning outcomes. Also, we are working on that. Yep, and that's it. Anything you want to say?
I was just going to say that, I mean, clearly if you've gone down this path, you'll know what the essential benefits are. But we do have, particularly some health papers with as many as like 1,500 students at a time. They were having to manually transfer grades across from one system to the other. I mean, clearly they can see with this process that they're saving potentially hundreds of hours of work in a year. Other business papers with 800 or 1,000 students, and the other benefit I think of this is that we have I've talked to people in the past about using online grading and using the grade board, the grade center and Blackboard, and they say, oh well, I only have to manually upload it anyway, so I might as well just use my spreadsheet. What's the point in using Blackboard? So being able to build in a tool like this is easing the workload and is perhaps I guess improving the imperative of using the online system, because there's no easy out in that sense, easy excuse. But I'm interested to know, I mean, maybe you've come to this session because you're in the wrong place, or maybe you came to this session because you want to know about grade integration. How many people have a solution for this? Is it significantly different from what we've developed?
We've got custom grade journey building block.
So you've used Grade Journey?
Yeah, so we use it a lot. And then we've got middleware from our banner, SIS system.
I think part of the problem for us is that we didn't have a student management system that anybody else had. So the idea of trying to, say, well, how did you do it? We've got the same system. Let's just use the same solution. It was never going to happen. But did you get over the Grade Journey thing about the Turn-it-in assignments? And when you say customise?
No, we've got no Turn-it-in customisation.
I mean, maybe you don't use Turn-it-in, but that was one of the major issues for us. It would have to be manually set up. Yeah, anybody else? Shelley?
We're looking at the All the Ducks solution that they built for Bond University, and we've been in talks with them now for quite a while, and we've had to put things off because we're with Technology One, we're moving Tech One into the SaaS. So after that's done, we're going to really look at using the All the Ducks solution. But what that does is it builds in the workflows that, the grades have to be, they have to be approved and written off and signed off before they can go into the system and be shown to the students. That's all built into the DUC solution. Has yours got that same workflow?
We did look at all the ducks a couple of years ago, and I really like what they've done. I think they've done a really comprehensive job. If anybody knows all the ducks, it's what are the guys' names?
Shane, Argo, and Wiley.
Shane and Wiley, that's right. And they've built a really elegant solution for doing this. The problem for us, it was going to be cloud hosted. It was going to be a sort of a regular subscription cost. When we looked at what we could do, we thought actually maybe, I mean, we don't have as elegant and comprehensive workflow solution, but I think it does do the job.
Our motto is buy not build.
Is
Buy not build.
buy not build, yeah, I completely get that too, yeah, sure. Anybody else with experiences in doing this? I think, I mean, essentially this is using web services, I think, from both ends, from our ANZ service and from Blackboard. So it's really just feeding data. Can I go back a bit? Well, feeding, if we go back to the actual interface. That one there. So essentially we're bringing in data from the ANZ system, which is one of the requirements of the setup, that the academic or the administrator in the course, in the program, has to have that structure set up. And then it brings in any grade centre information from Blackboard. So it's really just a manual process of mapping those. And we have had some performance issues, particularly in courses where they have, like 50 legacy grade centre columns or something, where that has to all populate before you can do something. But yeah, I mean, that's the solution. It seems to work really well. And we're just at the moment basically saying it's available to the entire university. We had about 100 courses, I think, in semester one using it without a problem. So I guess that's our story. Questions? Other questions? We have 2 other polytechs using it, actually, yeah. So it is a system that has other clients. I think Wintech and UCOL, which you'll probably know, Alan, both of these, yeah. I mean, I think that's the strategy, isn't it, Shelley? Buy, not build. I mean, this is something that we built ourselves, and it's become a legacy, and the cost of getting out of that, I think, is so enormous now. We nearly made the jump, but I think somebody did the figures and said it was going to cost $20 million to transition, not the cost of the solution, but the transition, and said it's just not worth, we can't do it. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.